Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for March 13th through 19th. This week I read 3 books, I watched 2 shows, I watched 3 movies, and I listened to 1 book. Also, earlier this week I posted my 10th part of the A to Z of Queer Lit challenge, so if you haven't seen that yet, I'll link it down below. The first book that I finished this week was Yours Cruelly, Elvira, Memoirs of the Mistress of the Dark by Cassandra Peterson. If you weren't aware, Elvira is not her real name. That is a character name. Her actual name is Cassandra Peterson. Elvira is one of those characters where I know who she is. I know she's the Mistress of the Dark, even though I don't think I ever saw her actual program. But I didn't know that much about her outside of that, so I decided to read this memoir. And let me tell you, she has been through some things. Not only did this memoir include her family life and the hardships you can find in that, it also includes the fact that her first job as a teenager was a go-go dancer and that she moved to Las Vegas to be a showgirl when she was 17. She is also currently 70 years old, so she's not only met but sometimes snogged and gone a little bit further with a lot of people from different eras that were attractive. A lot of the early part of this book includes her going to see different bands and then sneaking backstage and then sometimes making out with some of them. And then sometimes these famous people weren't very nice and she got her retribution later. In addition, we get to learn about her marriage, different gigs, the different friends she's made along the way. I very much enjoyed this. There were certain times where certain celebrities would come up and I'd be like, oh, this person? You know this person? Or I'd be like, oh, I know how this person's life ended and I'm not looking forward to the part where we get to that. Cassandra is funny and beautiful, and now I need to watch the Elvira movies. Next I read How to Be Ace by Rebecca Burgess. This is a graphic novel about this author's time growing up, going to college, and kind of trying to figure out that she's ace and what that looks like and the fact that that's perfectly okay. This was drawn in a fun style and really showed the internal conflict of the character because she didn't know what ace was until a certain point, and people just kept telling her that she would eventually meet the right person or she would eventually be interested in sex and all of these types of things that are just inaccurate if you happen to be ace. The other book that I read this week was Conversations with People Who Hate Me by Marron. This is an advanced reader's copy and I was so happy to get this copy because I've actually met Dylan before at a podcast convention, so I am familiar with this podcast that he has now turned into a book. If you are not familiar with Dylan's work, I was first introduced to him as an actor on Welcome to Night Vale, where he plays Carlos, a scientist. From there I've watched a lot of his online videos and I'd also listened to a bunch of this podcast, although once I realized I could be listening to audiobooks from the library for free, kind of stopped listening to podcasts. So by no stretch of the imagination have I listened to every single one of these episodes. I don't even know if I've listened to every single episode from the first season of that podcast. However, this book is about 12 lessons he's learned along the way from this social experiment. If you're not aware of the format of the podcast, essentially Dylan has asked different people who have written mean things to and about him online to talk to him, and they just kind of discuss their lives, go over the message that the person wrote, figure out what made them leave that message. Since the first season, he's also moved into moderating conversations between 2 other people that have had conflicts online, and this was written with such vulnerability, empathy. I knew from seeing him speak that he is very well spoken, and I was very excited to see this in book format because, like I said, I am probably never going to catch up on the podcast just because I'm listening to books now. I'm not listening to podcasts, but I was still very interested in how this social experiment went. And it's still ongoing, so if it sounds like something that you're interested in and you listen to podcasts, definitely check this one out. But then also check out this book because it goes into a lot of depth about this project and his feelings behind the scenes, and I just very much enjoyed it. On to the shows I watched. We watched the entire 2nd season of Upload, which is only 7 episodes long and leaves off at quite a cliffhanger, and the 3rd season has not been approved yet, although apparently they've started writing it, so let's see if that ever happens. Obviously, being the 2nd season is kind of like being a sequel, so there's not a lot I can tell you without spoilers for the 1st season, but what I can say is there are some definite character arcs. There was also one character where I think they just flat out needed to replace who the actress was. I didn't look up the reasoning behind behind it, but that happened, and that was a little bit weird, but also that's pretty much the only character you probably could have done that with. Actually, no, that's probably a lie. You could probably do that with any AI character, now that I think about it, because it would just be a system upgrade or something. But in any case, if you've never seen this show before, it started in 2020, but I only found it a couple of weeks ago, and it's about people who upload their consciousness after death and live in this afterlife where their living relatives can still communicate with them, and in some cases come to visit them in these very nice places or these very not nice places, depending on your income and how much you're willing to pay for the experience. We get some answers in this season, but we don't get all the answers in this season, and there are some things that happen that will make you feel feelings. I also stayed current on this week's episode of RuPaul's Drag Race. Yes, we are 11 episodes in and we were finally down to 7 queens. This week's episode was a lip-sync Lollapalooza extravaganza in which 7 of the 8 remaining queens had to lip-sync battle each other to figure out who was going to go home because apparently everybody did terribly last week on the Snatch Game. I thought that the person that went home actually won a few of the lip-syncs that she was in, but also I can understand that she has a history of being in the bottom, and they probably needed to get her to leave at some point. That's just how it went. I'm looking forward to seeing what challenge they have next. This was also a spectacular week for seeing what all of them can leave on the stage. On to the movies for this week, I also watched Jumanji: The Next Level. You might recall that I watched the first remake last week, and we decided to just keep that train rolling and go into this one because I honestly didn't know how they were going to make another one so soon, but it kind of worked. What I really liked about this one is how certain actors had to embody more than one character because of gaming mechanics, and that was just fun. We also got to bring in some more actors from my childhood and have them in this new remake, and overall this franchise is actually just really fun. We also got around to watching Spider-Man: No Way Home, and again, this is the third in its own little series, so it's really hard to talk about, especially because there are, tons of spoilers that the internet was very excited about. Essentially, this one leads off in a hard situation created at the end of the second Spider-Man movie, and because of this, Peter goes to see Stephen, who lives in the same city as him, aka Dr. Strange, and asks for his help, and obviously catastrophic things happen because of this. There are some devastating moments that happen in this, but there are also a lot of moments that really made me laugh, and I thought this was a solid addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I also sat in while my roommates were rewatching Fight Club, which is a movie I haven't seen in quite a while, so really all I remembered about it was people fighting in a basement and kind of the big twist that people tend to know about it. So going back into this, it was actually kind of fun to watch it again. I probably didn't know who Helena Bonham Carter was when I saw it for the first time, so seeing her in this was nice. Also, the fact that Tyler works for Paper Street Soap Company and lives on Paper Street made me laugh really, really hard because I have a friend who has a theater company called Paper Street Theater, and it's a specialty improv company where sometimes they will put on things like an improvised Jane Austen, or in one case they did an improvised Fight Club. Also, just obviously knowing what a Paper Street is because yes, I also read Paper Towns. This is one of those movies that is praised as being absolutely amazing, and okay, yes, the twist is pretty darn good, I'm not going to lie about that. But oh my goodness, the destruction and the mayhem and just the machismo of beating each other up for no reason is it's something. I don't really know how to put into words how I feel about it. This week I also listened to The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Starling. It took me a little while to realize why I knew that name, and that's because she also wrote The Luminous Dead, which I also read and had some similarities even though they are set in completely different places. The Death of Jane Lawrence is set in a world that's kind of like ours but also a little bit different. It's set in what we would consider our past, and it seems like it's kind of a Victorian England setting, except for women have a few more rights than they would have had in our actual history. Jane was adopted as a child because both of her parents died during a war, and her adoptive parents are moving back to the same town that she used to live in, and she doesn't really want to go there because she still has these memories of her parents and them dying, and she doesn't want to face that. So she decides she wants to stay in the city she lives in, but to do that she needs to get married because she doesn't really have the money to live by herself, and she doesn't want her adoptive parents to continue to have to pay for for her, and that's just kind of how the society rolls. So she kind of looks at what her options are and settles on this one doctor in town and approaches him saying, hey, can we have basically a political marriage so that I can stay here? I can also help you in your doctor practice. I'm really good with numbers, so I can do the books, and yeah, can that just be a thing? And initially he's very hesitant, but he goes, okay, if we've gotten certain terms, sure, we can just have a marriage of convenience. However, you're never allowed to go to my parents' estate because I just don't want you there. And she's like, okay, sure, whatever. And he's like, also, I spend every night there, so like I'm not gonna be in town at night. And she's like, okay, sure, whatever, I don't care. However, a mix-up on their wedding day means they actually have to end up going to the family estate, and she's supposed to leave after dinner. She's not supposed to stay the night, but another twist of fate means that she ends up being there, and she has to kind of figure out why he didn't want her there, and it gets a little bit of ooky spooky from there. The reason I said there are definite similarities between this book and The Luminous Dead is the main character spends a lot of time by herself, just trying to explore and understand situations without the input of other people, and then occasionally interacts with people and you don't really know if it's an actual person or if it's something else. I really like Jane as a character. She is very determined to figure things out. She really wants to help her new husband, and that goes down a whole rabbit hole, and then we have to figure out if all of these things that have been happening were real or if they were just imagined, and that's kind of a fun way to leave it. So I'd like to thank Cheyenne from Novel Insights for talking about this book in one of her wrap-ups, because that's where I found it. I figured it sounded interesting, and that's why I ended up listening to it. I don't always remember who exactly talked about a book and then I picked it up, but when I do and they have a link I could leave down below, I try to do that. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, and that is linked down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!